Why do people not get and stay clean off drugs? Why can they get clean and they end up going back? You would think life's gonna get better. They're off the drug. Drug addicts like me lose their health, wife, kids, family, job, money, you name it. Why do they keep going back to these things? We talk about the key to getting and staying clean. Find that out as you listen. I have over 4 years clean, almost 4.5 of all substances. I was a heroin addict who was shooting up, losing everything he had in his life, was a major thief, and I'm here to give you hope. Hit that bell on the subscription. Let's see what Jake and I have to say.
Jake, what's up, brother?
Not much, man. Last time that you and I spoke, I put up a YouTube channel after you and I were speaking, saying that it's a great medium and a great platform to really be able to reach people who are struggling, people who are looking for answers. That's the approach that I'm coming at right now. What's the most value that I can give to anyone? People that are struggling, people that aren't struggling, people that are sober but still can't really figure out why they're at this state of limbo. And I think, again, it's all theoretical, but I think that just looking over my life and talking to thousands of people who have suffered through addiction, I think that I know some answers that can really help people out.
Let's go into those. I think you're going to be onto something here, and you're not the only one who's probably espoused these ideas. So let's definitely dig, brother.
Yeah. So for me, at first, I think that we can all identify and we can all relate to the idea that addiction is isolatory in nature. It doesn't matter what you're using, guilt, shame, all these things, unless you're partaking with somebody else who's experiencing that same guilt and shame at the same time, you're hiding it from people. So you're becoming more and more and more reclusive. And so they talk in cognitive behavioral therapy about doing the exact opposite of what we want to do in order to rewire our brain. And so the opposite of isolation is connection. And I think that it bounds out much more than just like, okay, I need to be an AA surrounded by other people. I think that it starts first and foremost with a connection with self. And then you learn how to start bringing people into your fold.
I agree. I think that's all I can do is go into my own experiences, right? Over and over. I so relate to everything you just said. I know that I hid from my mom. Like she only wanted what was best for me, but I was ashamed and I didn't want the spotlight put on my darkness, so to speak. I literally, not metaphorically, would put sheets and blankets over my windows when I was in that state of mind on the opiates and wanted to nod out day in, day out. Enjoyed the darkness, enjoyed my quiet nod out space. Don't interrupt me. It was like you said, I curled up inside myself, and then boom, I needed to be kind of, for me at first, I'll say this, everybody has different, I guess, explanations here. I think it's a wrong thing though, for like people in recovery to one side say they have to want it. Okay. Part of me may want life to be better, may want things to be better. To say that we want to quit the drug, that's not the reality I experienced. What I experienced was I just wanted things to get better. I was sick of like how I felt. So with the drug, it was trying to like temporarily satisfy how I felt. And even then I was still getting sick of how I felt. So it wasn't doing the trick, and I needed something. There was the fear of change and getting better. But what I was more afraid of was not just the change of getting better. What was more fear to me at that moment was not changing. At that point, if I didn't change, I was already at the point, DSS, lose my wife, the kids, parole officer, jail. So that fear kind of made me go, all right, I want to get these things fixed, but I'm coming back to you.
Well, they call that ambivalence, right? And so that's having a dialectic between two thoughts. Having one where you really, 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 really want to not be in the state that you're in right now. I just want to feel anything other than this. And then another one where it's like, but this is comfortable. This is all that I really know. And so I understand that completely. And that's what I'm talking about with connection with self. It's like, because regardless of whether or not we want to admit that, it took me a long time to admit this, but I didn't want to get sober. I really didn't. I just didn't want to keep feeling the way that I was feeling.
Dude, you're relating to me then. Yeah. We have the same. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And so like my whole goal was just to get it dealt with and get through the addiction, like that physical withdrawal, so that then I could eventually like go back to it. Weekend warrior. I always admired people that could do that. When I was, I was like, that's like somebody who can use when they decide that they're going to use it, not use anymore. It's like, that's kind of how I want to be. Of course, now I know that that's not me, but that's what I thought that would have been a nice existence. But again, that's not me getting down to the core of who I am. And that's not me making that connection with self. That's me making a connection to a drug or to something else, to a feeling. When I'm talking about how connection can bring us out of the addiction, out of that self-imposed wreckage, whether it's addiction, isolation, depression, connection can help bring us out of that. And it starts with you, but you have to learn how to be honest with yourself. So like that fear that we were talking about, I look back on this and I know that it happened for me. I was posed with treatment and I was terrified of it. And I was posed with long-term treatment. And I know that's not your journey, but that one was mine. And so for me, I was like, yeah, there's no way I'm going to do a long-term treatment. But it's because I realized that was my addiction speaking, and it was afraid of its own death. So that fear was something that I had to dive full into.
I love that. I really should have and could have used long-term treatment. I really could have. An anomaly. I was lucky, to put it best. The fear of not, okay, so there's levels to this, right? There was a progression that took place. I went from brokenness inside, right? But I didn't realize it. I didn't really know how broken I was. I didn't know anything really yet. My mother, to talk about the connection, I talk about this often. It's the miracle in if there's a miracle, okay, let me put it like this. I'm not a religious guy, right?
Yeah.
But the closest thing to a real miracle that I've ever experienced comes right down to this. My mom sat down and she told me that she loved me. Okay. Whose mom doesn't tell them they love them, right? I was like, I love you too, Mom. She's like, no, son. No, you don't understand. And it was like, level up. She went deeper. So I said, oh, no, I get it, Mom. And she's like, no, son. And she really wanted me to understand. Like, I didn't get it. And now I understand. We listen to a song 100 times. You finally hear the lyrics and you go, wow, that song is really good. My mother sung a song to me that day in my soul, and it broke through all of that stuff you're talking about, that I was isolated, and it made me feel connection and emotion like I hadn't felt in a long time. And then things in the real world around me started lining up. Unbelievable coincidences.
That's exactly what I'm talking about, is that at first it took you being honest enough and connecting with yourself enough to understand, I'm hurt, I'm broken. And I hate using that dogmatic speak, like I'm broken, because I don't think anybody's broken beyond repair, but we have done some wreckage, right? So let's just say, I'm hurt and I got a lot of filth I got to clean up, or I got a lot of mess I got to clean up. So I don't really like the word broken, but so you have to make that recognition within yourself. You have to at least have the thought of life can get better. I don't know how it can. I don't know what I got to do, but I want it to get better than what it is right now. And then when you're at that point, I believe that somebody will come forward and there will be a moment like that. Because there's a saying, and it goes, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And in that moment, your mom was the teacher. She said exactly what you needed to say, because you had already gone through that dialogue in your head, building yourself up, tearing yourself down, not understanding how you're going to turn. And she said the exact right thing to you in the exact right moment to open up your mind to new possibilities.
I thought about this, and I know this is a little bit deterred, but on subject still pertaining to this. You and me, we help addicts. Okay. This is like what we do. Like, I mean, we spend every day trying the best we can. And I feel like this is the way, based off what you just said, I think this is important. I try the best I can to somehow make the student ready for the master to come. Like, I literally try. And wouldn't it be amazing to find the recipe, to know exactly how to make the student ready for the master to come? And this is where I understand when recovery addicts who are in recovery say they got to want it. I get it for long term, but to act like they're going to sit out there on the streets, and there's various levels at which people are harming themselves using, okay? To act like they're somehow going to want it just in the midst. Well, that was my experience. You're probably one out of 100 people who are shooting fentanyl, living out on the streets, doing God knows what to yourself or to other people to get these drugs, who just one day just wants it. Usually
The other
incarcerated.
thing, the other thing we can talk about too, right, is like how many times did you not want it whenever your family and friends wanted you to want it?
Yeah.
Because like when we look back on our experience, I'm sure that there were plenty of times that people around. I mean, I talk about this all the time. My best friend lived literally right next door to me,
Yeah.
all throughout college, and I didn't talk to him for a year. I'm sure that there were times whenever he wanted me to come over and knock on his door and just say, "Hey, man, this is what's going on with me," or he wanted to come over and knock on my door and say what's
Mm.
going on, you know. But I'm sure that there were plenty of times that those same people who are saying, "I just wanted it." I'm sure that there were plenty of times you didn't want it too, and we have to be one. We have to approach things with a certain level of grace, because if you're, I don't care if you're AA, if you're working for a program, if you're prescribing to doing it yourself, like whatever it is, these people need support. I've never heard of a single addict or alcoholic who's ever done it on their own, period.
No.
I've never heard of a single person who struggled with depression who's done it on their own. I've never heard of a single person who struggled with anxiety who's done it all completely on their own.
I had one lady actually comment on my Facebook. You're gonna love this.
Yeah.
She said, "I did it on my own. I did a meme, right? I created a meme, and I was like, no one can do it on their own." So she,
Hmm.
for some reason inside, felt necessary to let me know she did it on
Hmm.
her own. And I was like, "Wow, really? How'd you do that?" She said, "The Holy Spirit led me and got me clean." So then my follow-up question that I didn't ask, I was
Yeah.
going to ask her and say, "You must go to church or something." Because there's a community of people
Yeah.
who have music and there's teachings and there's lessons, and that
Mhm.
community is connection. Right
Yeah,
back to your topic.
it
uh,
is.
Everybody needs somebody, man, to try and do this at home. If a doctor prescribed me, I can only imagine if I lived alone and the doctor was prescribing me these things, I don't know what to say other than it would take like an outside force. Someone somehow would have to like cross my path. Something would have to happen, for me to actually get it.
Well, again, I think that it all stems back to that first connection with self, and it's like you have to be at a point where there's enough pain, or there's enough misery, or there's enough self-imposed wreckage that you recognize something's got to change. So even those people that are living by themselves, which was my story, that I was living by myself and I was taking on all these extracurriculars into different people. I was different things. I was keeping on appearances, and so like in front of my student government friends, I was a guy that was running the meetings. I looked like I had all my stuff together. Meanwhile, right before the meeting, I'm smoking pills in my office.
Right.
At law school, I had to dip out every 45 minutes so that I can make sure that I'm staying well. And then, like, when I'm doing National Mall United Nations, I'm sneaking out into the bathrooms and stuff to do it too. So I was different things to different people. But the thing is that I'm left alone with myself when I
Mhm.
go back home. And when I look in the mirror and I'm like, I don't have anyone around me. Like, when was the last time I truly had like fun? I don't even have fun doing this stuff anymore. I'm just doing it just to try to like feel somewhat normal. And
You
even
you
my normal sucks.
you mentioned something interesting when we did our first interview
Mhm.
about how you went to your teacher. Your teacher's like, "Look, we need to talk." And
Yeah.
I suspect that when you walked up to her, correct me if I'm wrong. Yes, there's this self-talk going on, probably like, "What's it about? Am I in trouble? Like something doesn't seem right." Whatever. But do you think what she said initiated what you already had going on in a sense, or did something just go through, like with my mom? Like she could have told me she loved me 100 times, but when she really told me and I had to really pay attention to something for a second that
Mhm.
really touched me somehow, it broke through.
You can't describe it, and I see you struggling to do it the same way that I struggled to do it, which is like, I don't know if it was the way that she said it. I don't know if it was her body language. I don't know if it was the tone of her voice, the accumulation of all the emotions I was going through up until that point. But what she said in that moment to me hit me in a way that no other conversation ever had. And it was three simple words like, "Are you okay?" But it was the
Mm.
way that she asked it. And it wasn't just like one of those, because like, I mean, I ask people all the time, "Hey man, how are you?" "Oh, I'm fine." And then like that's about the extent of it. And like what I'm challenging people to do, like, so once you move beyond the connection with self, is to start learning how to connect with others. So when you ask somebody like, "Hey, how are you? Are you okay?" Like, to ask it endearingly and to actually be available for the answer. Like, that's what I think is the biggest difference between what she was doing for me versus other people. I just had to defend this weekend. I was talking to a group of people, and they were like, I'm sure people ask you all the time if you were okay. I was like, yeah, they probably did, but they weren't available for the real answer. But like, I could tell that she was.
That's deep. I'm going to give you an example that I think this is why it's so important. People who I've got a lot of compliments for the recent intervention that took place with Kurt. Okay.
That's awesome, by the way, too.
Dude, think about what you just said and then line it up with this, right? So Kurt has had a lot of us kind of brush it off. We've almost not wanted to put up with him a lot of times, right? I mean, that's typical. Like, that's humanity. That's like, okay, you become a nuisance, right? Like, you've done so much. You've harmed mom and dad over and over. It's like, dude, it gets old. It's tiring. It becomes wearing down. But you got to remember, like, Derek, you got to remember. Well, when we did this intervention, we practically did the "Are you okay?" or "I love you" that my mom did, except he knew we wanted to listen. So it was like, dude, you're about to face the judgment seat of love, okay? And it's gonna melt you. You're gonna experience it. We want you to hear us, and we want to hear you. Because when we got done, Kurt's like, I'm going, dude. Like, and I think it kick-started something I hope he keeps.
Yeah. You guys are going through something similar to that I went through with my youngest sibling too, where it was, I was coming up on 4 years at that point. And so we were trying to get her in it. We went to treatment at the exact same time, myself and my youngest sister. And I got clean, one real attempt. And then she struggled on and off for years. And when it came down to it, you're right. Like, if you truly care and people are having that difficult time making those connections, you showing up and suiting up and you being that voice for them and showing that you're available for them is all that they need a lot of the time. I know you're not religious. I am, and I'm not God. I can't decide if this is going to be the time that it actually works for her. I think a certain degree of it has to be her choice. I think a certain degree of it has to be divine intervention. And I think a certain degree of it has to be her support system and her support network, or lack thereof, that all ties into whether or not this is going to take or not. But I'm like, I watched that intervention with you and your brother, and I was like, this is exactly what I'm talking about, because it forces somebody to connect with themselves and see what it's doing to the people that are within their lives.
Well, I'll put it in a simple way, and I usually don't discuss this on this channel, but regardless, I'm a firm believer that if the divine is there, it's in all of us, and that it's active everywhere at all times. So technically, the idea where, like, a Christian will watch my intervention and go, God is there, and I agree. See, I just define it differently. I have a total different definition of things.
That's fine.
That's cool. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
however people have to, and it doesn't matter. In my opinion, I don't really think it matters, as long as you understand to a certain degree. I mean, they talk about it in the big book,
right?
You can't be the sum accumulation of everything that's ever happened in the world.
No,
if that's the case, and you could just say, all right, I'm sober now. Never gonna have another issue.
I would have to pretend that my experience was just a trip, and to act like what I had happen to me when I got clean was complete mere coincidence. If it was the best coincidence possible. Okay.
Yeah.
And coincidence then was my divine intervention. So regardless.
And even then you're chalking it up to something bigger than like you making that decision. And like, we have to have a certain level of influence into it. We have the choice of free will. We're able to, there's nothing stopping me from right now being like, all right, I'm done and using. I have that choice. I have the power of that choice. But if I'm remaining completely connected to myself, completely connected to the people that I've chosen to bring into my life, my child, my wife, people like you, my closest friends, like, they expect me to show up and to be the guy that I have been for the last half decade.
Well, then, in my opinion, if I could comment on that, just to kind of briefly, at that point, I honestly want to kind of say, then you don't have a choice, because don't get me wrong. You know what I mean?
I do.
I like to say I set up walls and barriers, and people are like, how do you stay clean? And have you thought about using? Actually, behind those 20 walls that I built in my mind, there's the drugs. But
Mm-hmm.
first I have to hurdle this one, crawl under that one, break down that one, make sure I go around that one. Can I? Yeah, but it's more work going back to that than what I already am doing. So
That's exactly how I view it too. Is like, so again, I think that the way that I identify it, I wish that I could like show the audience a graphic that like I'm like working on it now, but at the center of a circle, right, it's you, and you build yourself up to a certain degree. And then, I mean, imagine it almost like a castle. Then on the outside of that, you need some forces, some troops, some people that are really going to have your back, call you on your BS, like let you know whenever you're acting out of line. And that's what I'll call like my direct circle of influence. And then beyond that, you have to have like the castle walls. So then you have to have something that's going to help protect you against like expectations, like jobs. If you're part of a group and you have responsibilities, why they say always get a commitment at AA meetings, doing things like what we're doing right now, having a certain expectation, those are your castle walls. Then you need a moat, right? So the people that, because we're in the positions that we're in, like
Right.
now we're reaching out, we're helping them, we're trying to attempt to connect to them. And then beyond that, we need a lot of space, a lot of land that we roll over in order to help get us to before we hit the next kingdom. And so that's what I'm talking about, our different varying levels of connection, and how when we do those things and we start to build up our communities, our lives, our castles, we pull ourselves out of that self-imposed wreckage and we build up strong lives.
Mhm.
And those lives are going to be what go out and influence and are shining beacons of hope for other people. And then that's what helps bring us out. Is like, that's why AA talks about servitude of self to other people. That's why if you do practice religion, it talks about Jesus always giving back to other people and serving others. Everything in life is about service to other people, but it starts with you first. You gotta get yourself right, because I can't just go out and be serving people a bunch of garbage. Don't
I
pick up
must
on it.
say that principle of serving others and stuff,
Mhm,
though it's religious, I practice it regardless. So like,
mhm,
um, there's certain principles I actually live by that I think are inherently a code that humans, period, no matter
mhm.
what, if it works and it's practical, I believe it. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? So it's like,
Yeah,
if
I think anybody should look at it that way, and
right,
it shouldn't matter whether or not you throw religious pretext on it, or if you throw AA doctrine, or if you throw just being you know a good person. That's the way I look at it. Is like, how can I
right,
just be a good person? Like whenever I was first dating Patricia, she and I were talking, and I was like, when I die, the only thing I want people to say is he was a good man. And so what do I have to do day in and day out in order to make sure that that's what's said on my, like when I die, is that Jake was a good man by everybody who knew me.
hmm
And like, that's what I want at the end of my life, is to do that. So what do I have to do in order to do that? Take your pick of whatever it is that you want to decide.
you know what my like it's amazing you said that, because I've asked that question to myself, like, what do I need to do? And I've come to personally, my own conclusion is that I just need to be true to who I am in my heart, and that is the best person I can ever be. And I found that to be the case. Like, the more I'm true to who I am and not trying to be something for someone else or pretend to be
Mhm.
something, like, I'm content. I'm not only content in terms of like I can live feeling no weight on my shoulders.
Mhm.
Everyone around me sees it, and they come to me and they trust me with information. They trust me. They know, they're like, he really means well. He
Well,
can't.
again, and exactly what you're talking about is what I keep going back to, and why it's so essential that it starts with you.
Yeah.
When you dig in and you make that connection to yourself and you understand who you truly are and you're your most authentic version of yourself, then that's whenever you're not putting on the mask, the facade for other people. When you're building up your followers, like the people who are going to be your innermost circle of influence, then the castle walls, then the moat, then the land. Like, your most authentic self to the people that are closest to you, your most authentic self all across the board.
Mhm.
You took the time to focus on you first.
I agree 100%. And those connections, just keeping those
Hmm.
connections. That's why I think like cleaning out our problems and staying connected is so important, because we'll lose track. I kind of look at it like this. It's just my opinion. I
Hmm.
think we humans, this is totally analogy. This is a metaphor, so to speak. We're all mirrors. And the only way I can clean myself is by going to you. Like,
Mhm.
you see me better than I can see me, in a
Yeah.
sense.
Mhm.
And like when I clean your face, I'm actually cleaning myself. It's
Mhm.
like it's weird, man. It's like you give away, if you give away, you keep. That's what
Mhm.
the principles of like AA and other
Mhm.
principles, religious principles, you name it.
Mhm.
If you give, you receive. If you
Mhm.
take, you're actually giving it away. Like you're not keeping it. And
Mhm.
that kind of mindset, that mentality is what I use practically, and it works, man.
Well, there's a really interesting book. It's called The Go Giver, and it's kind of like what turned my mind on to a lot of this stuff in the very beginning. And that's one of the it's the five stratospheric laws for success, but it all circles around giving people the best value that you can for who you are as an individual, and you're the only thing you're going to take into every single interaction that you're ever going
Yeah.
to have in life. So like giving yourself completely to somebody else and making sure you're giving them value that's directly proportionate to whatever it is that they expect, if not exceeding it, is the most important thing. And so like when you're talking about this stuff, and like, and I'm drawing it into the principles that I'm developing, I think it's an inherent human law, right? That like we're desperate to connect with other people, like we want to.
Hmm.
We have a lot of pseudo connection. Like you and I are in two completely different states, talking right now, connecting, talking about life and like our experiences, and we're doing it via telecom, which is amazing. But I also think back to whenever I was in like high school. Do you remember AIM?
AIM, the messenger
Yeah, AOL
app.
Instant
Yeah.
Messenger. So I think back to whenever I was in like middle school and I had a girlfriend and I talked to her every single day on AIM, but we were in the same class, like had all the same classes, and I never spoke to her in person. And it's like, and I think about that, and it's like it's pseudo connection,
Yeah.
and like we become so reliant upon those ideas and those facades from such a young age. Like when MySpace came out, it was all about your profile pic and how you wanted to paint yourself out to be. And then I think it's really interesting to go to Facebook and look at people's profile pictures because that's how they want to portray themselves to the world. And then you get to talk to people and it's like, oh, he's nothing like what I would have thought based on a Facebook profile, which 9 times out of 10 is how we make connections with people that aren't in our direct circle of influence.
Right. No, 100%. And I think that's also where a problem can come in, though, is
Hmm.
the social media not actually having pseudo connections and stuff,
Yeah.
and not really knowing who we are. I didn't know
Mhm.
who I was for a long time. I think as a kid, I knew who I was. Like
Yeah.
I had a connection with me. I
Hmm.
had an inner voice. And I talked to myself. I had a good connection. And then I lost that voice, you know?
I'll tell you a funny story. So I used to walk by mirrors. Do you remember Boy Meets World and like
Yeah.
Saved by the Bell and all that stuff? Okay, so like they used to hit a freeze frame, and he would like look over at the camera and talk to the camera and say and like kind of like
Yeah.
say
Yeah.
what was
Yeah.
going on. I used to walk by mirrors whenever I was a little kid, and I would like narrate my life. I'd be like, so my dad just punched me. He's an a-hole, and like just like, I would do that. And it's interesting that you say that because I feel like we are our truest, most pure selves. And it's like I, as a kid, always loved giving back to other people. I love going with my grandmother whenever she would take me to church and like helping to just volunteer. When I was 6 or 7. And then like I got older, school started to influence me. My friends started to influence me. I got older, social media started to influence me. Just like media in general started to influence me. And then I took that time, and I know you did too. I mean, 7 days detoxing is a lot of time to think, and so you,
Yeah.
and so you take that time to go back inward and like, who am I? What am I doing? Why am I here? And how can I make this blip of a second that I'm here on this planet for mean something?
Hmm.
That became the dialogue that I had. And then now that I look at my life, half a decade later, I'm doing the same things I loved doing whenever I was a kid. I love giving my time to people unconditionally and like just trying to help the human condition in general. And like whatever it is that I've been through, I don't want you to have to go through that. And like, yeah, it may not have resulted in me being like homeless underneath of a bridge, but I tell you what, like hurt is hurt is hurt. Is
Hmm.
pain is pain is pain. Depression is depression. Anxiety is anxiety. And I know the pain of it. Like I went through it. I was fortunate in that I was able to like maintain a certain level, but that doesn't mean that like I wasn't in the same throes. Like, and I wasn't saying the same negative crap to myself that I know that people say to themselves every single day, whether they're struggling with addiction, struggling with depression, on the verge of like thinking negative thoughts about potentially ending their situation.
Right.
I know what that's like. I think I told you this, like the first time I thought about taking my life, I was 11 years old. And it's like, I know what that pain feels like. And I know what it's like to say, maybe when this happens, it'll be better. Maybe when that happens, it'll be better. Maybe when this happens, it'll be better. And it never feeling like it gets any better.
Yeah.
Like I know what that feels like. And I'm telling you that for me, and what I've found for countless other people, is that the connections, like those things are what pulled me out of it. It was like, it just started off with little stuff, like just me making the decision for myself. And then eventually just having other people around me just to distract me from what was going on up here. And then it became me having responsibilities. And then it became me having like real responsibilities, like being a dad.
Yeah.
And then being a partner and being a husband. And it's when you stack all that stuff on top of each other, it's like, I have everything I have in my life now because of that one moment of deep connection that I had with that one conversation that then built and spiraled and continued to progress.
Right. No, I totally agree. Looking at my situation when I got clean, it was ass backwards. I mean, I had kids. We got married. Let me tell you this. My wife was a teenager, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Her parents had to sign her over to me. That's how young, she was very young. She was turning 17, or she might have been 17, but I think she was turning 17 when we got married.
Mm-hmm.
We had kids when she was 16, she was pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And we had kids. We got married. We ended up in a house. We had owned a house, right? All this stuff. Everything was going, and all the while my addiction is progressively becoming worse. Things were getting worse. And when I had to start over, I mean, you hit the nail in that order, the way things worked. I had an internal connection. I had an internal talk. I had to have a talk with myself. I do remember that. It's like when I really focus and try to remember how things worked when I got clean, I think we all have to have that talk, even that little bit of voice to tell ourselves, I gotta surrender to this. I gotta try. Give it a shot. You can do it, or whatever it is. Something inside is saying something.
I had that talk like 6 times with myself where I was like, dude, you got to do it. And then like I'd hit like week 2 and it wouldn't work. And then like I would do it again and I'd be like kicking on a couch and I'd be like, oh, dude. And then I couldn't do it. And then, but the thing is that like, I distinctly remember for me, and this is my story, I had that internal dialogue and I was like, I have nothing else to lose. And I prayed. And so this is my story. I prayed and I was like, whatever you put in my way, like, and you give me, I can't do it on my own. If you give me something, I will take it. And then like within a week and I had that conversation, I was like, this is it. Like this is,
I actually prayed too.
yeah.
I did.
And I mean, like I think like there's nothing wrong with that. I think that's how some people do with their internal dialogue.
I think most do. I mean, let's not lie. Most people are in a foxhole, man. I don't care who you are, you're gonna pray. And I did. But I think what happened for me, as I prayed, like I asked the power that is, I called it God, okay? And I said, you're gonna have to do this for me. I cannot. This is a monster. I'm not strong enough. And I'm pretty, I'm like you, man. I'm like, I have pretty good control over my thoughts and the way I think, and I'm pretty intelligent, I feel, and, et cetera, et cetera. But I had said that prayer. But I think what happened, even prior to me saying that prayer, there was this internal discussion going on in me. And what happened is I've told myself many times I need to quit, but I finally convinced myself too. Like it was finally like, there was a talk where I finally, instead of just saying it and it didn't happen, I really like somehow believed in what I said. I was like, okay, that's it. You really need to surrender. That's when I prayed. I was like, okay, I'm done trying to do this myself. Whatever you are, help me. I need you to do it. I cannot do this. And sure enough, the world around me, literally, like Carl Jung would say, the synchronicities. It was it was surreal. I went to go get cigarettes at the same gas station the day I left this lady's house 4 days clean, and there was the front page of the newspaper, an arm, a syringe, and a tie off, and it said heroin epidemic sweeping North Carolina, Fayetteville.
Mhm.
And there was a man in there named Sean who described it as God coming down from heaven, giving you a hug and telling you everything's going to be okay.
Mhm.
I went and found that AA meeting, NA or AA meeting. I think it was an NA meeting. Listened to everyone who's anonymously pronouncing their first names. Found the only guy named Sean in there and got him after the meeting. I was like, "Were you the guy in the newspaper, man?" And he's like,
Mhm.
"That was me. How'd you know?" I was like, "I feel like I needed to find you." And dude, there's so much. The story goes on, but I
Yeah,
found
I
a
mean,
connection.
again, right? So now you have another person who's going to help you out, and then you have somebody who's going to be able to call you out on your BS.
Yep.
He's going to be like, he's going to get to know you because you're being your most authentic self with them. You take one shade to the left or one shade to the right, they're going to know, and they're going to call
Right.
you out on it. And so for me, it's interesting. Like, you want to talk about the progression to disease. It's like you draw these false lines in the sand. It's like, oh, I'm never going to smoke a cigarette. Oh, I'm never going to smoke weed. I'm never going to get drunk, blackout drunk. I'm never going to do a benzo. I'm never going to do this. I'm never going to do that. And you cross those lines. I
Too
think you
many
have to do,
times.
I think you got to do the same thing in order to get yourself out of it, right? You need to go reverse back over across those lines. And it's like, okay, I want to stop. I'm not going to do this anymore. Unless it's on the weekend, and then you can't do it. And you're using it during the weekday. Okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm only going to limit myself to $40, and then you're stealing stuff in order to make it happen. Okay, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm only going to do it if this, and then it's like, and then you're crossing more and more and more lines. And you're like, okay, I got to stop, or else something really bad is going to happen.
Yeah. I told
And
myself I was going to die.
yeah,
Even if it wasn't true,
yeah, I
I
believed it.
really, yeah, like I believed in my own thing. And I was
Yeah.
like, okay, dude, you're going to die. Like, I mean, I was shooting up a sludge puddle of old blood at the end, trying to
Mm-hmm.
just get some type of hit, and I didn't get nothing out of it. So I knew that I was damned if I kept going. And it was like, I even like had, and I don't know if you did this as a kid, I'd walk, right? And I always believed that God knew everything before it happened, right? So I would, as a kid, somehow, bro, I don't know if you can relate to me on this, but I would say, okay, I'm going to trick God. I'm going to say, I'm going to go left, right, left. Ah, see, I went left. Oh no, he knew I was going to go left. Like I would have these conversations.
It's because he knew the dialogue that was already going to happen, and
Right.
like when even if you, so I'm not going to sit here and make pretend like I am, I'm a pastor or anything. I'm a recent Christian. I came to faith after I got sober.
Right.
So that's my story, is that was like the last piece of connection for me, was that
Right.
I had all these temporal people who were part of the world, that I had all these things set up for myself, and I still was feeling like I was missing something.
Right.
So for me, that's how my journey went. But even if you look at scripture and you dive into some of that, like what it will tell you is that we have freedom of choice, point blank. Like everything works, Romans 8:28, everything works in accordance to God's purpose for those who believe in him.
Mhm.
But that doesn't necessarily mean, right, that like your bad choices aren't going to have effects. That doesn't mean bad things aren't going to happen.
Right.
Like you still have the freedom to work within the plan. You can reject the plan, right, and go against it,
Mhm.
or you can accept it and make choices that are going to benefit the overall human condition, which, whether or not I knew it or not, that's all that I was working towards the entire time. When I was a kid and I was trying to perform music, it was like I needed to connect with something, right? I needed, first it was music, songs. I needed to just feel connection. Then I wanted to connect with other people, so I wanted them to feel what was going on with me. So that's why I was
Right.
giving music, and I wanted to make their lives better through music. Then it was like, oh, okay, I'm going to be an attorney for all these people that are screwing their lives up. I'm going to help them, and I'm going to do like really, really, really good things for these people. And I'm trying to like make the human condition better. And then now I'm working I was working as a admissions counselor, substance abuse. And so for me, it was like, okay, these people that are in the throes of addiction, how do I make that instantaneous connection, be that teacher, be that mom in the minute that somebody's ready, because they're calling, right? So
Mhm.
like, to some degree, they have to be ready, and they may
Yeah.
fight you tooth and nail. I know I did, but like I have a brief window to build trust and make a connection.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
like, and I could be that a-hole that's like, you know what, dude, you're not ready. you're sitting there talking about doing all this other stuff, and it doesn't fall in line with really getting sober.
Yeah,
You're
but
not ready.
that's where it gets to me. It's complex, right? So to me, I actually ignore that. Okay, so there's a
Mm-hmm.
recent scenario. I cannot name the people, but
Mm-hmm.
let's just put it this way: they relapsed. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and they have been fighting just nonstop with their
Mm-hmm.
spouse. Everyone, and this is recent,
Mm-hmm.
everyone is like, they want a divorce, they're done. He wants to
Mm-hmm.
move on, she needs to move. Like, they're just done. And I mean, this has been going on for a very long time that this has happened. I mean, like, you would think everybody just time to give up, right?
Yeah.
So I approached a scenario in person, and I said, okay, do me a favor, just let me mediate this, and let me just talk and ask questions back and forth, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, there's a cuss word here, and there's a yell at her there, and she's yelling back at him, and it's like, hey, stop, stop. So, like, the whole time, everyone who's watching is like, dude, this is not getting better. Like, they are not wanting what you're saying. I ignored everything that they were saying,
Mm-hmm.
and I explained later why. They don't know what they want. They
No,
are
there's this
so
hyper focused emotion that's just it's just emotion running rampant. And like what we need to do as people who are helping people through that and trying to be that initial connection is getting
Mhm.
people past the emotion and back to the logic center of the brain, the part that's responsible for that deeper integral human connection, and be like,
Yeah.
okay, like get it all out of your systems.
Yeah, and they did, but here's what happened. This is the amazing part. They're fighting. I'm trying to get to them to that level where you're talking about.
Yeah.
And finally, she breaks first, and she just says, "You can't. You can't drink anymore. You can't do it." And just starts crying. I mean, like, just, it no longer was, I'm Mrs. Tough Girl and you're Mr. Tough Guy. When she broke, it was a good break. It was like I
Mm-hmm.
felt the pressure go in the
Mm-hmm.
conversation, and then he immediately looked at me and I looked at him, almost like, you remember the story with Samuel the prophet and King
Mm-hmm.
David, after he took
Mm-hmm.
this man's wife, gets caught cheating, all of Israel
Mm-hmm.
has no rain, all this stuff. Next thing you know, Samuel looks over at him. I saw at least a Bible movie version of it. Samuel looked at David after, all
Mm-hmm.
this is going on, almost like, you know what to do now. And he goes
Yeah.
to the tabernacle, and that's when he asks Yahweh to forgive him, right? Because,
Yeah.
like, I'm repented. I messed up.
Mm-hmm.
The movie was really cool. But nonetheless, I looked at him and I did like Samuel, and I was like, you know what time it is. And he
Mm-hmm.
came over to her and he grabbed her. He started crying. They made amends right then. And right now, to this day, every day they're calling and they're like on fire for the
Mm-hmm.
positive. If I'd have gave up, I hope that someone else would have been sent. But at that point, it changed everything. And when people are like, "Oh, leave them alone, they're not ready," I hear this message a lot in 12 steps, and I'm not trying to knock it, man, but
Yeah.
they got to want it, or they're just not ready. Only when they're ready. How about initiate sometimes? How about try to see if you can't break through? Because I didn't want it. And if it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't for my mom and my wife saying, "I'm done, no more enabling, we're going to make you make a choice." And at this
Mm-hmm.
point, I had a choice, but that was the last choice I ever even desired and wanted, because you're trying to take away the only thing that made me feel complete at that moment in my life.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing that
Yeah.
made me feel like I had any bit of hope was heroin. You're trying to steal it from me, and I need my fix. Well, guess what? If they didn't do that, I wouldn't be who I am and where I am right now today, looking to you, doing this podcast with over
Mm-hmm.
4 years clean, talking to an audience of who knows how many might watch this.
Mm-hmm.
And you wouldn't be joining me if the same thing didn't happen to you in some way,
Exactly.
whatever your form is.
Well, that's what it is for everybody. And again, like you're talking about, like even if we remove alcohol from the equation, we just talk about it from like a marriage in distress, right? The connection that those two needed from you is what pulled the marriage out of distress. Like I think that like you can like as far as what my story goes, and as far as what a lot of people who I speak with, there's a lot of people out there who I think suffer from substance abuse. All right, like it's not yours, you shouldn't be taking it. You're drinking more than just on the weekends or special occasions. Like you're abusing a substance, you're waking up with a hangover, you're abusing. And
Mhm.
so at least according to the DSM. And so as far as so for me, when I look at this, it's like, let's just talk about the problems, like the life problems, marriage in distress, right? In my case, on the borderline of failing out of law school because I couldn't show up on time. If we just look at the wreckage, the self-imposed wreckage that's happening, It's like those connections can pull you out of that.
Mhm.
And then eventually, right, when you're ready to admit to the fact that like maybe you don't need to be doing this stuff anymore, then you can
Might be
do
a good
that.
idea.
Well, yeah, but it's like for the people who want to go the whole AA route, it's like, okay, fine. I'm not talking to these guys about him being ready. I'm talking to him because he's going to lose his wife.
Right, right. They don't need to die for this to be
Yeah.
the case either.
Yeah.
But I get what you're saying though. And I just I've heard it said in the past, you know, there was a time where we wanted a guy who's like guru in recovery, 12-step
hmm
sponsor, all that stuff. And I remember calling him to ask him to help me with my brother.
hmm
And he like asked a couple questions about Kurt and then
hmm
was like, he's not ready. And I'm like, wow, like now who I am today, I
hmm
honestly, I call bullshit. I'm not saying that he may not get clean this time. What I'm saying is no effort was even made. You know,
hmm
yeah, we did the recent intervention. Will
hmm
he stay clean? I don't know.
Well,
However,
That's Kurt's choice.
right.
Right. And then like, and again, there's going to be I believe that we're given situations and opportunities to choose like positive things for ourselves or choose negative things for ourselves. Just like what we were talking about with that video that you and I both watched prior to doing this. Like we're going to be tempted.
Mhm.
That's life. And like life is filled with temporal temptations, things that
Right.
are meant to draw us out, things that are designed to like pull us off of the path that we're creating for ourselves. That's going to happen. It's going to happen to Kurt. And the only thing that's going to wind up, in my opinion, is knowing that like he can call you up and be like, hey, I'm going through it today. I don't know what to do. This is what happened to me.
Right.
And then, but he needs to be able to make that choice to rely on that connection. It's like for me, dude, it's like I have to go a lot of the time and go talk to, I was just talking to Patricia today about it. It's like, I need like a huge calendar that says like, this is what I'm doing. These are the times that I'm doing it.
Me too,
And
bro.
then just like move the stuff over. Cause I'm feeling like super overwhelmed. She's like, I'll help you. It's like, that's a connection,
Dude, my
right?
wife is doing that for me right now. That's so weird. I think we're like, dude, we've got to be twins somewhere in some multiverse or something, man. Like it's crazy. You have a lot in common with me, but I agree with
Mhm.
you, man. If I didn't have my wife, oh my gosh, bro.
Yeah. And it's like,
Dude,
but I have to be connected with myself to admit like I'm feeling overwhelmed.
yeah.
And it's like, and then feel comfortable enough to the person beside me that I've chosen to walk life with me. Hey, like I need your help with this. I don't know what to do. And I get the advice. Turning it back to Kurt, being new in sobriety, he's gonna need somebody
Mhm.
that he can be like, hey, I'm feeling uncomfortable. Like I just came from the gym and there are guys outside. I saw a Coke can, I saw the light on. Like I know what they're doing.
Yeah.
And part of me wanted to go walk up there and go say something to him. But I called you instead. And then like, building on that momentum, falling into it again, being like, hey man, you know what? You need somebody to go to the gym with. I got a guy for you. And then like you connecting him to somebody else, then that being a connection. That way then he's never by himself.
And
Like
build up
that's
those walls so that
and
when he's
exactly.
smoking out of a can, he's not thinking, "Oh my God, I might fall." Like I hear a lot
Yeah.
of people who don't build up these
Mm-hmm.
walls. He's thinking, "Man, I really feel, bad for that person right now. They're
Mm-hmm.
stuck." I tell you, man. I mentioned this before, but not often on my channel. I got my brother to go to rehab one time before, and he was actually shooting up cocaine and heroin, and he couldn't hit a vein.
Oh wow.
And the only way that I could get him to go was to pretty much bribe him in a way. Like
Mm-hmm.
I will get you straight. Let's go. And of course, I had Narcan with me and everything. Like I was prepared. But
Mm-hmm.
regardless, like I helped him inject. As
Mm-hmm.
a heroin addict who was mainlining, I helped him hit his vein. And he's like, I can't
Mm-hmm.
believe you're doing this, bro. Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, bro, you don't understand where I'm at. I'm so far from that mentality, that mindset that I want to help save you.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like, the saying, the Bible verse where he's like, I'll go through the fires, you are with me. I'll go through the
Mm-hmm.
waters, you're with me. Like
Mm-hmm.
I feel almost that invincible, like I can't get beat by the addiction here. I mean, and maybe if I dwelled around it all the time, of course.
Yeah.
I'm saying though, I had a mission. It was a mission mind. It wasn't like, all right, I'm gonna go hang out with you while you shoot up every day all day. No, I'm coming in. You're coming out. we're going to rehab. I got you. And I
Yeah,
got him, and
well,
he got clean for a while. But
and even then, like people who are within AA and those things, they're like, you can go to a bar if you're there for a purpose,
right.
right? So it's like, I mean, I'm not gonna like not go to concerts for bands that I love just because like there's gonna be alcohol there. It's like I'm there to listen to music though. You
Right.
know, now I'm also not going to be the guy who goes up and is like, okay, I need to have Red Bull in my hand so that I don't feel weird. It's like, then I'm not being true to myself, right? It's like, I don't care what people think about what's in my hand or not. I'm there to see the band that I came to see.
Exactly.
And like for you in your situation, it's like, I'm here to get my brother out. I don't care what it takes. He's getting into detox today. And it's like, I'm with you. I think that if you go in there with a mission, then you should be fine. Uh, Again, I'm with you. Again, I don't think that like you need to be hanging around dope houses 24/7 either.
Right.
You remember DJ AM?
Uh-uh.
Well, so he has an amazing documentary. I encourage anybody who's in recovery to go watch it.
Okay.
But he was with Travis Barker in the plane that crashed. He used to do celebrity, so he was an interventionist on
Oh, wow.
MTV. He was like the face of like sobriety for a while, like prior to like Dax Shepard and all those other things. Like MTV was like following around him.
Okay.
And he was a pretty well known like celebrity DJ. Had that plane crash with Travis Barker, the drummer from Blink-182. It spiraled him into like prescription opiates again, and then long story short, wound up ODing in his hotel room. And he talked about his closest friends, described now in retrospect, how maybe being around all of that 24/7,
Yeah.
like going in, going out, whenever he was on prescription opiates, how it was slowly, I call it gradual degradation of your moral integrity, right? Like you say you have a mission to go in there. Do you really? Right. And it's like, you need to check yourself and have that strong connection with yourself,
Right.
because like there is a gradual degradation. And it's like, you can be tempted over and over and over and over and
Yeah,
over and over and over
eventually
again.
it gets through that armor and eventually
Yeah.
becomes something that if you're an addict like me, eventually that subtle voice can start to sound very loud. And then you get behind all those walls you built.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I went in with a mission, but I get what you're saying. And
Mm-hmm.
also I'll say this is like, whoa, my wife was prescribed Percocet for most of my years being clean.
Wow.
For most of the years being clean. And that's the stuff that got me started all along.
Mm-hmm.
However, I did something in my mind, and I don't know. I don't know, man. I created these walls. Like,
No, I get it.
I
I recently.
redefined Percocet was like Tylenol to me in my mind, because I had ended on heroin, and heroin
Mhm.
was like, if you're going back, that's the end game, right? Like that's what the aim is.
Yeah.
Percocet, like I still had the same mindset as a heroin addict when I looked at Percocet, in the sense that, what's that going to do? Like that's nothing. And I was so serious about like, I'm going to die. And I still to this day hold that after 4 years. I still like, I will die. Now I have a fear. I openly admit, if I had to be prescribed and I had to go into surgery, or I had to experience something like that, I want the doctors to keep me in the hospital if I had to.
Mm.
Like I don't have a say in this matter. Like I don't even have a say, right?
Mhm.
I literally, like, I have gynecomastia from steroids. I abused steroids. My estrogen
Mhm.
got so high that I ended up with tissue. Well, it's not even, it's like
Mhm.
a tissue behind my nipples. I
Mhm.
do want those cut out. Now they talk about, oh, they'll give you a light opioid. Hell no. Take ibuprofen. I don't care how painful at that point. I'm legit not going to use any opiates, anything that's going to hit the receptors like that. I will literally stick to the ibuprofen.
Yeah,
That's it.
whatever I can. Yeah.
If they keep me
I
though, I
was
tell them,
talking
hold me down, dude. Like,
well, I was talking to Patricia about the same thing, and I was saying that if it were, for me, it was like I either need you to hold on to them, like I can't know where they are or anything along those lines. And it's not out of fear. Again, it's another wall.
mm-hmm.
Like I have zero desire to ever use again. And
Right.
like today, like I can say that firmly, confidently right now. And for a while, I have had zero desire to ever use again. And like you and I spoke about this before, because I had met you a little while ago, and I was just on the beginning side of like quitting nicotine. And like
Oh, yeah.
yeah, and so like now I'm fast approaching over a month. And so for me, I took the same exact approach that I took for opiates. It's like, not even one. Like not
Don't.
even one.
Exactly. Hey,
Like,
congratulations, bro.
yeah,
For real.
it's like for it was like it doesn't matter if it's one hit, it doesn't matter if it's one cigarette, it doesn't matter if it's one piece of Nicorette gum, not even one.
Not
Like
even-
that's the same thing I had to decide for. Like, it's not even one drug. Doesn't matter if it's weed, alcohol, THC, any of the, like, I mean, I don't care what it is, not even one.
not
Like,
even
if
one.
I can make that commitment to myself, then like that's the first wall.
Yeah.
And then everything after that, it's building up more and more and more and more
Well,
and
you
more.
build that confidence, I feel, as the chemical does leave. Like, it's not like on day 2, you were just able, you probably told yourself, I got to stop. But like, I think as the chemicals leave, then we do gain more confidence.
Or you like, but that confidence works both ways, because I've
Right.
seen it in myself, where I went the exact opposite direction with it, where I was like, yeah,
Okay.
now I'm feeling confident, but like it was a bad confidence. It's like, okay, yeah, I'm not going to go back to opiates. I can have a beer. That wasn't my problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, that's not my problem. I was feeling real good about myself. I was like, oh, the physical withdrawal is over with. I can have a beer, not a problem. 10 days later, I'm using again.
I know people who can. It's weird, but
Well,
I tell you, they're
I'm not gonna
very
play.
rare. I don't.
Yeah, I'm
play.
not gonna. Yeah, I'm not gonna. I consider it Russian roulette. I've said this to a lot of people too. It's like there are people out there who can just smoke weed. There are people out there who can just drink alcohol. I don't know if I'm one of them, but I'm not willing to risk it.
My sister had 10 years, literally like 10 years off meth. All right. And
Wow.
heroin. She did heroin a little bit, but like she was nothing like I was on heroin. And
Mhm.
Kurt beat me and her to the punch on all
Mhm.
that. 10 years. She went to a party, or she was going somewhere, wine tasting, something. Okay.
Mhm.
Alcohol got in the mix. She
Oh,
went to a
wow.
party, and she used to run away. Like, that was just how she was with
Mhm.
her husband. She would disappear,
Mhm.
and boom, like, gets drunk, boom, meth.
Mm.
And it started out slowly, just having a little bit to drink here and there. It wasn't like one night she just decides, I'm going to have a beer, sweetheart.
Mhm.
Meth. No,
Yeah.
it wasn't like that. And that's what's funny is a lot of people go, I can drink. Yeah, you might last 6 months
You
sipping
might
on
last
that
six.
wine,
You
or
might last 6 years. You
might
might
last.
last.
Yeah.
Yeah, you might last. You might last 16 years. But like, I call it a gradual degradation, and of your moral integrity. That's what I call it. And it's like, and for me, I have to get to a certain spot before I'm willing to smoke pills off of foil.
Mhm.
Like I have to be feeling like really, really, really bad about myself, in order for me. And this is my story. I'm not saying everybody has that happen, but for me to get to where I got at the level that I got to it,
Right.
I was feeling really, really, really bad about myself. And like, it's going to take a lot to get me there. And like, is it one beer? I don't know, but I'm not willing to chance it. Like, it could be one beer, it could be 100 beers, it could be 1,000 beers. Who knows? But it's not worth the risk. Not even one.
Not for me either.
Yeah, and it's like, and again, like, if I'm being honest with myself, it's like I feel the best when I have nothing in my system. Like, even without nicotine, it was like I
Yeah.
would have that talk again, like what we're talking about, where I would say, why am I doing this? I gotta have a daughter. Do I want her doing this? Do I want her seeing me doing this?
Right.
Do I want her thinking this is cool? And it's like, no. And then I have to stop. And then so I made the decision. And then I relied on my support network. I told Patricia, so my connection, again, my direct circle of influence. Then I told the people around me, hey, don't even offer it to me. Because
Right.
like where I work, like everybody vapes. Don't even offer it to me. I don't want it. Not even one. And then like, I don't care how stressed I am. And then now it's like to a point where it's like, I walk around people and like, do I feel stressed? I'll tell you one thing that is interesting for everybody out there who wants to quit vaping. It's not the vaping that'll get you for whatever reason. It's actually cigarettes seem more appealing than anything else has. And I don't know why. It's the strangest thing. It's like I haven't smoked cigarettes in like 4 years, but I've had more cravings for cigarettes than what I've had for Percocet, for beer, for THC. I was like, you know what, that doesn't sound so bad, even though I know it's great for me.
I never understood that. My
Yeah.
like, not my wife, but I have friends that would vape, and when they didn't have their juice or something, they'd
Mhm.
smoke. And I'm
It's
like,
so weird. I don't.
that's weird. Is there not a lesser thing you can choose than cigarettes, or is like
It's
vaping
so
beyond
weird.
cigarettes and you're just deciding to go down to, I mean, like, it's just weird to me that, like, for example, if for whatever reason I didn't have vape, wouldn't you think you'd find like nicotine gum or something like
Yeah,
it didn't make sense to me why you would go back to the thing you're like,
it
no.
is. It's so crazy. But again, it's like I have to remain true. Again, I have those walls, and they fluctuate in and they fluctuate out. It's like breathing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so everybody who's inside of out here, like the people that I work with, they all know. And I've told people, like, I don't use nicotine. So now there's a certain expectation. Jake doesn't do that,
Right.
right? And then it's
Create
like, but
walls.
exactly. And then it's like, and then you go inwards, and it's like people that I work with don't offer it to me. I don't care how stressed I am. If I ask for it, don't give it to me. So now I have that one. And I put, and then Patricia and my child, and it's like, okay, no matter what, I'm not going to do this for. I told you guys I wouldn't. I'm not going to. And then
You
myself,
just with your hands, you literally just, I'm getting weird here for you for
yeah,
a second. You literally discussed the outer courts, the inner courts, and the Holy of Holies. You do know that, right? Like literally, here's the Gentiles, okay? Here's the common folk, and then here's the priest, like it was interesting the level at which you did that though. You took
hmm
it from people kind of get the gist, all right,
hmm
work, which is that
hmm
inner, and then boom, Holy Holies family. Anyway, I
yeah.
just thought that was an interesting thing
And
dealing
then
with.
at the core, me.
Right. And you're in the Holy of Holies. So
And like, and that's what I'm talking about when it comes. It doesn't matter, full circle. I don't personally. There's an amazing book that's really big right now. I encourage you to read it. It's called Lost Connections, and it just so happens to tie in perfectly with like what I'm messaging, but it deals specifically with depression. This guy's story is about depression, and I think it ties in perfectly with the opioid epidemic.
right.
From what I've seen in the messaging that I've always spoken about, and I also think it ties in perfectly with the suicidal ideations and the rapid suicide rates that are going up. And I think that it also ties in really, really, really well with just like the just this culture in general, and like people who are feeling lost, from everything from like college graduates, and they're like, this degree does nothing, to to the people
Yeah.
who are struggling to get out of their hometowns, to the people that are trying to fight to create their own narrative. It's like, what's your connections like?
Mm-hmm.
And then like, and wherever you want to be, set your connections up to be that. Like, you saw the guy in the newspaper,
Mm-hmm.
and you're like, that guy gets it. He understands how I'm thinking.
Yep.
I need to link up with him because he has more time than I have. He at least has more than 4 days, so he can at least get me another step down the road.
It's funny. That's why I think it's vital there are people like what we do for a living, helping
Mm-hmm.
others
Mm-hmm.
with addiction, because we might be that voice that they go, oh, I did that to my wife, or I did that to my mom, I stole
Mm-hmm.
from my family member, I did. And that's why people are like, dude, what? I've been to jobs, all right, where I literally openly discuss I'm a drug addict. Like, I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, hey, just so you know, like, I'm a recovering drug addict. I was a junkie by definition
Mm-hmm.
or terms. I was shooting up, I was stealing and lying, and they're like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, they put me aside. Why in the hell would you? What are you doing? I'm like, do you know that someone's probably going to approach me later that you don't even know? They're going to pull me aside and
Mm-hmm.
go, hey, man. And I've had this happen so many times. And they're like, dude, I can't stop doing cocaine. And I'm like, I knew, me being transparent, me being who I am. This is who I am, like it or not. You know what I mean? And just
Yeah.
come out and
Well,
say,
that's.
I am this, like Paul says. All right. And
Mm-hmm.
I had Christians all the time, dude. I just want to throw this out there because this
Yeah.
is interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
They always go, and I actually fell for this. And I thought, I don't have a disease of addiction. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have this problem. I'm redeemed. I'm saved. I'm healed. Right. And this is a concept that was taught from the church as a person who did this. Stop believing that I had this problem. Stop believing that I was just morally, it was a moral thing. It was a spiritual and moral thing only, not scientific.
Mm-hmm.
This is all spiritual. Well, I relapsed down the road, but I found something that when they say that, I simply say, so Paul was no longer a wretch. He was no longer a sinner. Even though he said he was the chief among all, you're telling me he stopped being the chief of sinners because he got redeemed and saved by the Lord? No, he actually, when he got saved, then realized how much more of a wretch, according to
Mm-hmm.
his ideology, how much more of a wretch he was from being saved. So when I come along and I hear people say that, I'm very cautious to even listen, because I know there's science behind what's going on with me, and you can attribute spiritual to it. Okay. I know that I was broken. I know that I needed some remedy that the natural may not, suffice. Okay. Regardless, that whole notion of you're cured because you were just healed in the name of Jesus and you're no longer a sinner. Stop calling yourself a drug addict. Don't use these labels. If you don't want to call yourself a drug addict because you've gotten clean, that's fine, because you might have a different idea of what recovery is and what addiction is. However, when I was told that, it was like, you just need to be spiritually good and you're good. There was no maintaining on that.
It goes beyond, and I know that you know this, but it goes beyond all of that. Like, I mean, again, it's biological.
So you said the three things.
Yeah. So you gotta have something that's going to affect your biology. You're going to have something that's going to, affect your psychology, and they're going to have something that's going to affect your sociology. What we've been talking about this entire time is sociology and biology. Literally having the social networks that are then going to affect the way that your brain works. That's what I'm talking about. How can sociological practices affect the biology of the brain? That's what we've been talking about this whole time. When it comes to psychology, which can be broken down to like spirituality, things that are going to be the way that, like, how our brains work, the direction, the focus, the lens of how our brains are being focused. It doesn't matter if it's cognitive behavioral therapy, rational and motive behavioral therapy, if it's spiritual practices, all of that's changing the way that how your brain thinks. Like thinking about your thinking, metacognition. There's a brilliant book that marriages these two ideas together. It's called, I think it's called Rewiring Your Brain. I'd have to double check. I think it's
almost the name of my website, man.
I'm looking all over for it because I have Patricia reading it right now, but it's called Rewiring Your Brain, and it ties together the practices and teachings of the Bible with science and neuroscience. Okay. And like the Bible literally talks about a renewal of mind, right? And how the Spirit can help renew your mind. And then it's saying, and we're seeing now through cognitive behavioral therapy, neuroplasticity, that you can renew your mind. This is how you do it. Right. Right. And it's like, so it's marrying these two ideas. And I don't think that these things always have to be in conflict. There's a way that you can marriage them. I had to to understand everything before I could open up my heart and be like, okay, I still got something missing here. Like personally, I do that I need to bring in for myself. And I think that other people can go the opposite. They're like, my heart's ready, but now I need to understand it because like I feel good, but I don't feel great. Like what's going on? How can I fix the rest of this? And so to me, I think that like when you look at it, like if you're trying to break it down and trying to understand it, the best thing that I would say for me is that start with yourself, get real with where you want to start, right? Connect with yourself first. Get surrounded by people who you can trust to call you out on your BS. And then when you go to that next circle, like start looking for people, like look for people who take the approach that maybe you take, or take the approach that maybe I take, and start asking them questions and be like, what books can I read? What podcasts can I listen to? What things can I do that are going to like expand my mind in the direction that you want it to go? Because like, I didn't take the same path that you took, but we're still both right here. There's all paths, I think, wind up leading to the same spot. There's no perfect path for anyone. And it's like, and eventually you just get to a spot where, you're just ready to help other people.
Have you ever, it's funny you say that, like, have you ever heard of the 6 Wise Men of Hindustan?
Mm-mm.
You've never heard of the 6 Wise Men of Hindustan?
No.
Wow. That's something worthy of reading as a closing statement, I personally feel, because I know we've gone long enough. And this is, by the way, going to be also on the podcast, Rewired Addiction podcast, that I'm going to be having launched on the website. Okay. It's going to be on Spotify, iTunes, you name it. It's going to get out there and stuff. So we haven't launched it yet in terms of like getting the website out, but it'll be out soon. And I want to read this to you. This is all right, when people get on here that are like really like staunch Christians, they get upset at me because they're like, you need to give credit where credit's due, right? Well, I'm a weirdo, man. So let me read you something here.
Okay.
And I think it's vital. Personally,
I love that you had it like just down there underneath the desk.
Yeah, like I don't want if I put my phone on the desk, it'll like, if someone does text, and I get a lot of them, it'll like,
I was actually looking for the real book, and I was going to show you the actual book. I'm going to do a
No,
book plug for someone else.
right? You need to get paid, right? Someone better start. I'm just kidding. All right,
Until I finish my own.
I'm going to close out on this. If you haven't read this, is my opinion. This is a very a livable way of viewing the world and its religions and people with different thoughts. I consider this poem every time I hear people argue about their positions and who's right and wrong and why and this and that, and all the time. This is exactly what I go to. And when you've read a little bit beyond just one book, and you or beyond 66 books, okay,
Mm-hmm.
and you've read beyond that, you have expanded your mind and realized cultures across the world all are kind of reaching to similar things. They're not identical, but there's very similar issues. And I'll read you this and I'll close out on this. All right. And this is an interesting podcast because I don't usually discuss these things on Rewired Addiction, but with you, I feel very comfortable. And you're a good man. You know, I can tell in your heart you care. And for everybody watching, make sure you go subscribe to his channel. It is in the description. He really is about this life, you know, and I've met him in person. Him and his wife are absolutely amazing people. And she hooked me up with what I should have been paying for, but thank God I'm broke and they looked out for me. All right. This is by John Godfrey Sachs. It was 6 men of Hindustan, to learning much inclined, who went to see the elephant, though all of them were blind, that each by observation might satisfy the mind. The first approached the elephant, and happening to fall against his broad and sturdy side, at once began to bawl. Bless me, it seems the elephant is very like a wall. The second, filling of his tusk, cried, Ho, what have we here? So very round and smooth and sharp, to me 'tis mighty clear. This wonder of an elephant is very like a spear. The third approached the animal, and happening to take the squirming trunk within his hands, then boldly up and spake, I see, quoth he, the elephant is very like a snake. The fourth reached out an eager hand and felt about the knee. What most this wondrous beast is like is mighty plain, quoth he. 'Tis clear enough the elephant is very like a tree. The fifth, who chanced to touch the ear, said, I'm the blindest man, can tell what this resembles most, deny the fact who can. This marvel of an elephant is very like a fan. The sixth no sooner had begun about the beast to grope, than seizing on the swinging tail that fell within his scope, I see, quoth he, the elephant is very like a rope. And so these men of Hindustan disputed loud and long, each in his own opinion, exceeding stiff and strong, though each was partly in the right, and all were in the wrong. So often theologic wars the disputants, I ween, rail on in utter ignorance of what each other mean, and prayed about an elephant not one of them has seen. Okay? I talk in language very much like the religious, okay? I apply it practically, but to me, that's my thing. We're all talking about an elephant, whatever that may be, not one of us has seen. And if you have, good for you. If you're going to use, I saw Jesus, okay, good for you. I haven't. And I personally apply myself the same way Thomas in the New Testament. Jesus did not mock him or scoff him one bit. If this is the case, please appear to me. Show me your hands, show me your side, and I'll be the greatest of your disciples. I promise you I'll do anything and everything, you know, in terms of that aspect. So what I'm saying is I love everybody, regardless of their faith, and I don't have any issues with whatever one believes. I believe that we're all trying to seek something, and I think it's all, as Paul says, he's not far from each one of us. We live, we breathe, and we have our being. Yeah. You can't escape it.
I agree, you know? and that's for my last piece again. Like the only thing that I would say is that to sum up your statement is that all roads, I believe, lead all of us towards the same path, except for the ones that obviously don't. Right? Right. If you're on a journey of like self-enlightenment, like better self-improvement, and like, and you're searching for answers, I think that like eventually all roads lead back towards the same spot. Basically, you just don't want to be an a-hole. You want to try to give as much back to other people as what you can, and you want to be as good of a person on this earth as what you can while you can. And like that's about it, right? And
yeah,
whatever road you need to take in order to make that happen for yourself, like then take it. Mine was one way.
Right.
Like yours is another. But ultimately, if I can look back on this life, which and honestly, it's a fraction of a second, I can say, you know, I did the most good I could do with what little time I had here. That's all I want. And if I believe something that's going to help me get there a little bit quicker or make it a little bit less, you know, convoluted for me, then that's what I need for me. I need my own like rules for the game.
Right.
And those are the rules that I chose because they're the ones that I believe.
Jake Evans, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me. Rewired Addiction. Go subscribe to his channel. If you guys have any questions, you're having issues, you can find him in the description. His website is there. You guys can go to his YouTube. And also, if you need help, you can reach out to him. You can reach out to me. We both do these things. We both help people who are struggling with addiction. You're not alone. We're here to connect with you, not just hear what you got to say. We're here to connect with you.